And so it begins. Match day number 4, the 4th episode of the Ben v. Ben podcast. Ben, before I introduce you and let you speak on the podcast, I need to ask you a question. What is your favorite German word?
I wish we'd had some prep for this. There's lots that I can't remember right now. They've got some beautiful words.
They have a word for everything.
I can reconcile right or remember right now.
Well, Ben, that's disappointing because I have one that is burned into the top of my head. It is burned after watching this weekend's action. We have just witnessed Schadenfreude Sunday in the Premier League. For those who versions against the 1% who hate the traditional powers that are Manchester United and Liverpool, it was a glorious day to watch old institutions just fall beneath the crumbling weight of expectations.
I won't ask why that's such a popular word in Germany, but okay. What's the space finder one? Like they're a finder of space. Is that German or Spanish? There's a beautiful word for a space explorer and a space finder. Anyway.
You know, I really hadn't thought this bit out more than that. And then when you took me a little bit into the deeper water, I can't really go anywhere. I'm a one-trick pony when it comes to German words, so I can't help you there.
All right, then my favorite word is Guten Tag.
Guten Tag. Prost. Prost.
Is that German or is that like Norwegian and Scandinavian? Anyway, this is not what the podcast's about. It's not Rosetta Stone.
No, but it is talking about Schadenfreude, at least for this bin on the end of this, not Zoom. I guess we're a Skype call, but Zoom call, whatever. It's a colloquial term. I think we're going to dive right into it.
I think the Brits say gangbusters. That's our phrase for this weekend.
Well, Ben, despite the branding of this podcast, we're buds, we're pals. I need to ask you a question. Are we in the trust tree?
Sure, in the trust tree.
Great. That's the kind of podcast that I want listeners, when you hear this, just know that we're in the trust tree. The schedule on Sunday, and when it came to the late afternoon kickoff of Aston Villa and Liverpool, I thought that I can catch up on the match of the day highlights. This might be one that I can skip so that I can spend time with my pregnant wife. So I did not watch this game. I was instead watching Ted Lasso, which I don't know if we're going to talk about right now, but we are going to talk about Ted Lasso in some of this podcast. So I was watching Ted Lasso all the way through, a binge of it. And when I finished the binge and I looked at the score line, the term jaw hits the floor gets used a little bit too often, but my proverbial jaw hit the floor. Aston Villa 7, Liverpool 2. Ben, initial reactions to that scoreline.
So I had a very similar experience. This is one that I had as an easy win for Liverpool. I didn't tune into it. And then you text me and said, have you seen the score? And I looked and it was 7-2. It was the 85th minute. And you said, we're going to have to watch this. And I was like, damn, you're right. I managed to be able to reset the satellite TV to go back to the beginning of the match. You can't fast forward through half time or any of that. But I watched the whole game and I still don't quite know what happened either.
So, Ben, I'm a big fan of the life work of Sylvester Stallone. Now, there are better Rockies and there are worse Rockies. Rocky IV, I would consider, and not one of the better Rockies. It's good for its own sort of campiness, but there is a point in that movie that I like to think about with sports. And it comes when Rocky travels to Moscow and he fights Ivan Drago. I believe it's like the second or third round. Drago's pounding him, and then Rocky counterpunches and makes the Russian bleed. And his corner says, the Russians cut. The Russians cut. And that is the sign that Rocky is going to take down Drago. is this match a sign Liverpool is cut, that they can be beaten? They aren't a machine. They are, in fact, mortal.
Is it Dolph Lundgren that plays the Russian?
You know your IMDb well. Yes, it is Dolph Lundgren.
You know, I think that they've been bleeding since after the COVID restart, and I think, you know, there's reasons why they've been bleeding. I think Jurgen Klopp knows this as well. Their high line can be suicide if they don't do it properly. I think Trent Alexander, for all the plaudits he got last season coming into this season as the best attacking right back in the world, he is not a good defender. He has made a lot of mistakes since COVID lockdown to now. There was a lot of individual mistakes. There wasn't great cover, but the amount of times they just hit hit a high line and pick through, I think that's something that Klopp has to get right. And I'm glad it's coming now and not in the latter stages of Champions League, because they are susceptible to being overturned on a quick high press. So they've been bleeding for a while, I think.
That I think the last goal, the Jack Grealish goal, where he was TAA was in fairyland. I don't know what he was doing. He was, you know, when you're down 6 goals, maybe you want to lock onto your defender. Jack Grealish blew right past him. You know, the crazy thing about this is, and when I think about the match, I have 2 opposing thoughts in my head. I think there was 3 deflected goals. Allison wasn't in goal, right? The first goal that started the stampede was a big mistake by the backup keeper. There was 3 deflected goals. So I hold that in one side, right?
Yeah.
I hold that, you know, what chaos theory, what can go wrong will go wrong in that match. Now, the other side that I watched that match, it could have been 10, right? And I think when you watch that match, and, you know, I don't think he's the lead story in this match, but that is the full Ross Barkley experience. That match is Ross Barkley has chances to think it's not going to go well. But when you give him up and down, where he's just using his raw physical skills and he's being technical, but being technical without time to think about what the pass I'm going to play or stopping the ball, he's a monster. And I think he should have had 4 goals in this match. He only scored one off a deflection. But Ross Barkley to Aston Villa, it's kind of looking nice.
That was game suited Ross Barkley's skills down to the T. I agree. I think he missed a lot of chances. He got really lucky with a lot of his shots as well. Do you think Aston Villa's his level? Do you think he's found his level with Aston Villa?
I mean, as someone who's watched him in a Chelsea kit for about 2 or 3 years, I would say he's not a Chelsea level. Now, the funny thing is, the best Ross Barkley match, the absolute best match came against Liverpool right before the COVID happened. We knocked them out of the FA Cup. This is the famous Billy Gilmore match. When Billy Gilmore came in against Liverpool and sort of bossed the midfield, Ross Barkley actually scored 2 goals in that match and was supreme. He's that's the highlight, is an FA Cup match that Liverpool kind of didn't care about. I mean, they cared about it. They just didn't care about it that much. So, yeah, to your answer, his level's not top 6. I don't know if it's bottom dweller Aston Villa. I sort of thought of him as, you know, thing is like it doesn't apply now, but like the Everton side before he left, I thought that was his level. You know, maybe an 8th, 9th, 10th place team, which Aston Villa could be turning into. They've made some adept signings, which we could talk about in a second. So I'll agree with you. It's probably about his level.
And I will say that I think Liverpool have kind of suffered from their own success. I definitely think Adrian didn't help. They really miss Henderson to kind of be that leader on the pitch and boss the midfield. And the commentators, the commentating annoyed me on this, because the whole narrative through the whole game, it was 6-2 down, and they were still like, well, Liverpool are about to come back. And I think that Barcelona win showed them that anything's possible if they keep trying, if they keep pressing. But they did it in a way where they kept looking to like the whole narrative through that whole game, I think why 7-2 end was such a surprise was Liverpool are going to come back. Liverpool are going to come back. This next goal is going to be Liverpool come back. And I think they pushed so high and so attacking, looking for that second goal, that they just got absolutely pummeled and picked apart as well.
Well, another player missing from that match from Liverpool, who I think is definitively Liverpool's best player, is Sane. And you see what happens on a high line when you do not press from the front and people can look up and pick a pass and just hit it over, right? So in this podcast, I think that have possessed myself the world's biggest Leeds fan that is not a Leeds fan. This is exactly what they did against Liverpool. And every side has essentially tried the exact same strategy. And I know we disagreed about Chelsea's performance against Liverpool, but they got some one-on-ones with Timo Werner that you would expect in any other day that they would bury. So sides have found success just not playing long ball, because I don't really think it's, 4-4-2, dump it to a big up front, but it's more beating that high line by just bypassing the midfield over the top. What I'm really trying to say is Leeds walked this path that I think now Aston Villa just brought it home.
Yeah.
And, with the high line, if you don't press from the front, you can look silly. Very, very silly. So.
And there were so many individual mistakes as well. I agree the pressing was bad throughout the team. They made a ton of individual errors that didn't help as well. And I think you're right, Leeds gave them the blueprint to beat Liverpool. And I think now the whole Premiership in Europe's got that blueprint.
Well, and I joked about the Russians cut. And right, the big thing about that in the metaphor, in the narrative of Rocky is then they don't fear Russian as much because he can bleed. The 7-2, I don't think it's saying, oh, Liverpool all of a sudden are not going to win the title and they're not useless. But maybe Leeds has shown, and Aston Villa has brought it home, that when you go on the pitch, you're not beaten, right? There is a path forward to beating a Liverpool, a side that has basically averaged 100 points in the last 2 seasons, that there is a way of doing this. And, everyone from Aston Villa, what was like finishing 17th last year, 16th last year, right? Barely avoided the drop, took them to the woodshed. So, Aston Villa was led by the line. Ross Barkley and I think Jack Grealish get most of the plaudits this week, but they did have a new striker. And generally, the recipe of bottom-dwelling Premier League sides buying a championship striker for an exorbitant amount of money, that is a story as old as time. And you know what usually happens? Generally heartbreak. No, it's never worked. But let me tell you, now this name is great. It is the most law firm name I've ever heard. Ollie George Arthur Watkins.
Britain, England. Perfect.
Ollie George Arthur Watkins from Brentford, which is interesting because I don't even think he's the most highly guarded guy at Brentford. They have a guy named Benarama that's been, anyways, sold for I think nearly 30 million pounds. And this is, when you look up the definition of flop, this is generally what's supposed to happen when Aston Villa spins for this kind of player. But he was great. He was awesome leading.
Yeah, his finishes were tidy. He pressed well. Let's not another well-known trap. 2 traps that everyone falls into. 1, buying from the Championship, expecting to perform in the Premiership. 2, overrating a youngster who has a good game and then saying they've got great things to come. I think that the goal is to see this consistently over time. But that perfect hat trick against Liverpool, I think you're always going to get plaudits. Seemed like a nice as well.
It's the one thing that is sad is Villa fans not being a packed stadium for this was sad, because this is something that Villa fans who were at the game, this would be something they would talk about for years, right? It hasn't been the 1980s. I think that's when the last time Villa won the league, maybe the 80s. It hasn't been the 80s in a long time. And this is something they could have dined out on for forever, which they still will, but it's just a different experience if you were there.
And I wonder if that empty stadium, I've heard this talked about a lot in the last couple of weeks, that it leads to this kind of maybe drop off in focus or individual errors, or the amount of there's a slide and it feels like a training match and you get overtaken. There's not that crowd energy forcing you to change it or work harder or do something different or press different. I do think that's a huge. People have underestimated the effect that's had since the beginning of time.
All right, Ben. So Schadenfreude Sunday, was not just the Aston Villa Liverpool match. There was a match before this, which really could have, for me, have been Schadenfreude Sunday. It was the Manchester United Spurs match. Ben, at the end of this match, the scoreline, Manchester United 1, Spurs 6. Ben, what was the worst moment of the match for you watching this?
I think, well, I'll start with the worst. Arguably, that's our strongest team. Like, we had our best players on that field. If you were going to pick, like, who are the best players to lead with, it would be that team. And we've got no excuse in terms of injuries or suspensions. It's at home. We won a penalty in the first minute that we put away. And then Moo's sitting on the sideline like, this is our chance to rub his face in it. So talk about the hope that kills you. It was the perfect day for us to go out and absolutely destroy them. Spurs were knackered from their Carabao Cup, so many games they've had to play as well. And we absolutely capitulated, and it was disgusting. And Moo's comments after the match, he's comes out, they were unlucky today, Manchester United. I've won a lot at this stadium with Man United and with Real Madrid and with Porto. And you're like, yeah, we get it. It was that. It's the hope that kills you. It was just one knife after another. We had the perfect conditions to win and then end up getting stuffed 6-1.
Ben, I think you snuck in a sly Ted Lasso reference there, the hope that kills you. Pretty good. I'm on to you. But that wasn't even my favorite Mourinho quote post-match. My favorite Mourinho post-match is he's talking about the score deficit, and he's talking about this happens to everyone. And he was like, he summed to the point was, I know what it's like to lose 4 goals, 5 goals. I don't think I've ever lost 6 goals. Can
I tell you what the silver linings were? And this is the sick thing about life. There's 2 silver linings were having Son in my fantasy football team and not subbing him out because I didn't have any transfers. I didn't expect him to score. And then him scoring a goal against my own team and cheering for it. And then also Dele Alli coming on in the second half, meaning that you owe me a 6-pack of craft beer and I am a soothsayer in player rotation.
I forgot to address that. A Thurber always pays his debts. I don't know when I'm going to pay that to you because of COVID-19 and I'm traveling here this tomorrow. But maybe in a year I will get you that 6-pack. Ben, I think you sort of dodged the question of like what was maybe the Mourinho comments were the worst moments. Let me tell you, as someone who enjoyed this match, watching Manchester United flummox in this match, my big fat Greek crime lord, Slaphead Maguire, down his own defender, Luke Shaw, arguably should have gotten a red card for tackling his own defender to let Spurs score the goal. Ben, now that the Greek crime boss has been indicted over in Greece, is it time to sit him? I mean, he's awful.
Maguire or Shaw or both of them?
I think Shaw. I mean, Shaw's whatever it is, but Harry Maguire's your captain, and he is a train wreck.
Yeah. He had such a bad. Not only was he responsible for something that the back pass by Maguire was terrible. The mistake he made in putting down Shaw was terrible. But the way he led that line and the way he reads the game and tells, so some of it was Shaw out of position. And the way he told Shaw to follow other runs and misread the game and let other people run in, he had a nightmare. But honestly, Maguire was terrible. I think Shaw was equally as culpable as well. He is the sidekick to my big fat Greek crime lord centre back. He is the snivelling Muttley that runs around next to him. I think both of them had a terrible game. That chop down on Moura, on Lucas Moura, 100% he should have been off. 100%.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. The only person who probably had a worse time watching this match, Patrice Evra. Patrice Evra, for those who didn't see the commentary, about had a crying fit on the stage and said that the story about Alexis Sanchez famously going to United's training pitch and wanting to tear up the contract the first day there because he felt it was rotten. And Patrice Evra saying that he wanted to tear up his Sky or BBC, I don't remember which provider, contract because he couldn't commentate on United because it made him so sad and angry. Then Patrice Evra's a big baby. You're being paid hundreds of thousands of pounds to give your opinion. Come on now. That is like, therefore you can't criticize them.
We are very lucky for the amount of commentators that have come from Man United and we're very active, well respected. We've got Roy Keane, we've got Gary Neville, we've got Patrice Evra, and I think all of them were in a very, very successful United side, and I think it just kills them. And you know what? I'm glad that they've got a platform to speak about United. Even Gary Neville, who never said anything about the board, it's great he's coming out, and I think it makes as a fan, it makes the fans feel better that there's a voice saying the same thing that everyone's thinking.
Agreed. But we're there to hear your opinions about United.
No. You're allowed to have a biased opinion. You're allowed to be a character. I think it makes it more interesting.
Yes, you're allowed to have a biased opinion, but I want you to give your opinion. Right, like saying like, "Oh, I can't commentate on United matches." It's a soft move by Patrice Evra.
You can still say that you feel bad for the result and do a good analysis of where they went wrong, and I think he does that.
Maybe, Patrice. I will admit my bias for Patrice Evra. I watched the Anelka documentary, and I just recently, and I remember that French uprising against Raymond Domenech. Yeah, I mean, like, whatever. But, like, uprisings during the World Cup, not really a great look.
He's a strong character. That's why he's our captain. He's got a strong...
Yes, you use that strong character to give the fans a unique insight that only you can give, having been a captain of the most, if not the second most storied club in England, right? Don't just sit there and cry about it. Okay. Anyways. Enough about United.
Well, I've got a lot more on United that I've added. Can I talk through some of my talking points and get your opinion as flip
sure.
That. I also think that, and I've got a really, I've thought a lot about the relationship between players and manager and a director of football. But firstly, I think what was also telling was when we switched to that defensive screen of Fred and McTominay, how we still conceded two more goals. So putting two defensive midfielders to screen our back four, we still conceded as well, which is terrible. And it shows that it maybe is less about the formation and more about just the application on the field. That's my hot take one, that even when we changed, it's not like we got the system wrong. We added defensive midfielders and still leaked goals as well. Other thought as well is Lamela should have been off, right? What's your take on that Lamela Martial incident?
They both should have been off or neither off, right? But either off. But what Lamela did, until I was like 20, I would thought soccer was for sissies, right? Because you would see these clips in America, and that's just terrible. I mean, it's awful. culturally it's a little bit different. I think in South America, that sort of shithousery is a little bit more not accepted, but not as derided than the English game, or certainly an American viewpoint of soccer. But it was awful. I mean, I would have been embarrassed if I were a Spurs fan at that. I can't stand it.
I get it. Like you want it for your team, but I think I don't blame Lamela for doing it. I kind of wonder why VAR didn't catch that and why that replay of that incident didn't show Lamela's part in that.
I'm a firm believer if you're intentionally trying to get someone sent off by a reaction, right, and trying to deceive the referee to a severity of reaction, you should be sent off.
Yeah.
So I mean that would cut it out, right? Like if you're rolling on the floor, there's a famous, I forget what it was. It's actually kind of funny. So maybe I'm bringing it back. I think David Luiz got fouled against United, and he was laying sort of in a fetal position away from the field, and you could see him laughing, right? Laughing about it. I thought that was funny as a Chelsea fan, but all in all, I think that deceiving the referee to try to get someone sent off is poor form, poor sports, and I just don't like it. It's so foreign to American sports that it's hard to deal with.
I just don't understand why VAR doesn't catch that. VAR catches a dire handball facing the wrong way in slow motion. It doesn't catch shithousery in the box of hands on faces. It just feels like a huge miss.
Yeah.
Anyway, we do all right in those kind of positions. The other question I wanted to ask you as well, you've made a good point about just the relationship between Kane and Son and their counter-attacking football. So, Spurs were amazing. That link-up play was outstanding. The finishing was clinical. They look great. And then you're going to add Gareth Bale to the mix as well?
Yep. I mean, it's going to be great. I mean, I'm a pro Mourinho guy. I'm an anti-Spurs guy, but I'm a pro Mourinho guy. And I'm a pro attacking football guy, right? So I love watching it. They're probably my third favorite team to watch this season. And Son is the perfect counter-attacking player because he can play on the wing, he's got speed, and he's clinical, right? Yeah. He is super clinical, and Kane has turned into almost like a Benzema, like being able to play these sort of balls. He's incredible. The media, I think we listen to, like The Guardian and some of those football podcasts that, tend to not like Jose Mourinho because I think it's kind of, I'm not going to say Jose Mourinho would be a Republican, but I think that they think Jose Mourinho would be a Republican, right? Sort of, they don't value his style of coaching, his maybe way of life, so they just don't like him, right? Like, and you can tell they're rooting for him to fail, and they begrudgingly give him, they don't really begrudgingly give him respect, right, anymore. And now Mourinho has a lot of things that have gone on to his past that are not admirable. But to say he's not one of the best, 5 football managers in the world, I think it's kind of crazy. And we're seeing maybe the institutional rot inside of United. And yes, he didn't do amazing at United, but that place is rotten to the core, and it starts with Ed Woodward, who is a less effective chief executive officer, Donald Trump or Ed Woodward?
Yeah. So I was going to say this, but humor me if you will. I've been working on the effect timeline. So this is how I want people to think about football out there. So players win games. You have moments of magic. You have individual mistakes. Players win games. Managers win seasons. So the establishment of the right rotation of players, the right system, the right coaching, they're responsible for seasons. Now, the board, director of football, that level above the manager, they win generations and decades. So they understand what are the right players to bring in, what's the investment we want to put back in that club. And there's a relationship between all three as well. You can have a bad manager, but if you have great players, that's fine. They can go on and do their thing, and they can win you a few games, and that will get you so far. Or you could have average players, but if you've got a good manager, then you're going to overperform and have a good season because you've got a really good manager, either developing, coaching those players with a good system that plays to those players' strengths, you're going to outperform as well. And then ideally, you have this great board, let's say like Liverpool, like Chelsea, someone who invests in the club, someone who's putting that money back, someone who has that technical knowledge as well and says, this is the player that you need. So like Arsenal, let's say they've got a good board. They put in the right players to fill a squad. Newcastle, let's say they haven't. They've got a really bad investor. They've suffered. You can have the best manager and the best players, but if you've got that board taking money from the club, they're never going to develop. So I think that's a way to think of it. Players win games, managers win seasons, directors win generations.
Yes. So basically, Ed Woodward has lost the post-Alex Ferguson generation, and it's a lost generation. All right.
You know, there's blame on all levels right now. I honestly think that the biggest broken thing in all that, I think, is with Ole. I think, like, the board, they take money out. They're not great. They don't back him. I just don't think they're very good at their jobs. I just think their negotiating skills aren't great. And I think that some of that this season has been Woodward saying, I'm sick of paying the United tax. Whenever I go out and buy a player, they put a tax on. I'm going to start playing some chicken this season or this window, and I'm not going to swerve. And I'm going to start driving down the consistent overpricing for Man United players. Now, the problem with that is that financial information is public domain. They know we're the richest club. You're always going to get overpriced players or inflated figures for players, and I think that's just a job you've got to do, and you've just got to go out there and you've got to pay it and just think. Part of being such a successful financial club is that you're going to overpay, and that's just something we're going to have to live with.
Well, then we'll talk about United here and their transfer, because that's a great lead-in. Because Schadenfreude Sunday ended, and we had the English transfer window end at 6 o'clock Eastern U.S. Eastern Standard Time. I can tell you that even though Chelsea did not have a super eventful transfer deadline day, I probably broke the F5 button of my computer. I was refreshing. I was trying to see who was coming in, who was coming out. And I want to do a thought exercise. I wanted to ask you, who were the best and worst signings? And we're going to break it into two brackets. We're going to go with the big boys. We're going to go with the top six. Who are the best and worst signings of the top six? And then we'll go to the rest of the league because we don't want to forget about the other sides. Who are the best and worst signings of this transfer window in the bottom 14 clubs? Now, Ben, we'll start with the top. We'll start with the juicy one, the sexy one. Who is your best signing of a top six side in this transfer window?
So I will not knee jerk. I will not base it on the last four games. I think there's definitely different criteria, but potentially what I've seen could be season defining potential signings. I think the first one is Mendy. The first thing Chelsea had to do was get that goalkeeper position fixed, because that translates to your defence. That translates to keeping goals out. You could have the best attack in the world, but if you're leaking like you were, you're not going to go far in any European competition. So I think Mendy was, and yet to be seen, a very important signing. The same argument could be made for Thiago at Liverpool. He might be the missing piece they need to unlock defences, control games, see games out, which is exactly what you need for the Champions League as well. Thomas Partey for Arsenal, and the whole rigmarole around that today as well about Atletico should have been informed that they wanted this place, wanted that player, and give them time to find a replacement. I think that's the danger of having a release clause. But I will say that's a position that Arsenal fans have been crying out for probably since Vieira left. And then I will say the one that everyone's talking about unlocking a team's potential with one signing is Pierre-Emile Højbjerg for Spurs. He has unlocked that midfield, given them a bit of robustness, defensiveness, and pass into that midfield, which has freed the rest of the squad. I think he's been a really important signing for Spurs. So all of those, I don't have this is the best signing of the window, that knee jerk, but I know you do. But I think those are ones to watch that will transform a season.
Ben, there's an issue of you got to pick the best. We're trying to make stark opinions here, right? And it's an audio podcast.
All right.
We're trying to go for a little bit of brevity.
Pierre Holberg.
Okay, I like it. I like it. I wish you would have picked the Chelsea signing, but we'll go with there. In reviewing those, I can't disagree with any of your opinions. I'm going to hold out a little on Mendy quite yet before I call him the best signing. My best signing is, I think I took about it from a little bit different perspective. I think of signing as both. What is we don't have enough to respond to the actual quality right now. So what is the potential maximum of the signing, and what is the potential minimum of the signing? Who has a high ceiling and a high floor? I think that's Kai Havertz, right? Like, he was bought for about 70 million from Germany. I think he was top 5 in goal contributions around the world. Even if it doesn't work at Chelsea, you're going to get money out of Kai Havertz. He's too young, right? Given the health. And then he potentially could be we use the term world class a lot. He has the credentials, the bloodline of a world class player, given what he has already done in the Bundesliga. So I think to get that sort of player for Chelsea, that's a sort of player that goes to Real Madrid or Barcelona, the true big boys of the transfer market. So I think for Chelsea now, the only reason why they got them was probably a series of confluting events where Barca's broke, Real Madrid's trying to deal with COVID and trying to get their house in order. So I think Chelsea smartly swooped in and got a signing that probably, I like to think of Chelsea as a, top 5 club in the world, but they're probably in the next tier of clubs in the world, probably somewhere between that top 10, top 15 club in the world, right? They don't even have the power that Manchester United has in the transfer market. So to get up that type of player in the transfer market, I think is a shrewd business move for Chelsea.
I will say you're right in everything you say. You were never going to find a player to the quality of William, but he'll do. He's like the next best thing. I get it.
Oh my God. 33-year-old or 32-year-old. I guess he's 31.
He'll be the best attacking midfielder in the Premiership.
Attacking midfielder in the. I wish he would play for you, and then you would really understand his above average mediocrity that he just stays at. Not too bad, not too great.
Love consistency.
Okay, Ben. I am eager to talk about this. Big 6 worst signing, and I'm going to take the lead on this one. Ben, I'm going to read you a tweet from Sky Sports. I can't pronounce his last name, so I'm just going to. Sorry, I'm not properly attributing you. Tweet. It has taken Manchester United 15 months to replace 80 million euro Romelu Lukaku with a 200,000 pound a week 33-year-old free agent who hasn't played for 7 months. He is alluding to Edison Cavani. Goals last season: Lukaku 38-7. I mean, the Cavani signing is tragically bad. I don't know where you're going to play him, right? I guess maybe he gets called up front because Martial is out for his violent conduct for 3 games, but he doesn't really play on the wing. He's a backup striker, and do you really think he's going to be happy and not a problem just collecting his paycheck and not touching the field? And I think my problem with it, I think he's on a 3-year deal or at least a 2-year deal.
Yeah, it's a 1-year pay and then possible extension for another.
I mean, his wages are like, how many games are you supposed to get out of Cavani? It's just awful. I can't. And to speak about the board, right? Coming into, I think it was last year, right, when they signed Daniel James, there was this whole United, we're going to sign young English talent and prioritize English talent. Well, Edison Cavani is the complete opposite of that strategy. You're buying an overpriced merchant who isn't going to help you. So sort of speaks up a lack of a plan. And it seems like the decision was they tried to call Borussia Dortmund's bluff on Jadon Sancho. It didn't work, and they got left with Edison Cavani. The better move would have been to do nothing at all. Nothing.
Well, I hear you, and I thought that at first, but I've talked myself round, and I'll tell you
Oh
why.
my
I
God.
agree. Listen, and I agree with you completely. It's a signing we could do rather than a signing we should do. He's been on free for a while. I'll tell you why it might work out, and these are a few reasons. I think they said the same about Zlatan when he came to United, and he was very instrumental for United. Think of it the same way. We bring out in an aging target man striker, and people say that's not how we play, out of position, don't need him. And he was super useful for us, especially in Europe as well. So I do really think Cavani may have the same effect on the squad as Zlatan. I also think that they probably need some experience in that dressing room. You've got a huge amount of young strikers. I definitely think training with Cavani every day, they're going to learn a lot as well and develop their game. So I think it's a really good development strategy as well. And I don't think Cavani is the washed up thing that people think they are. Now, James Horncastle on The Guardian really made me feel great because he watches that French football a lot. I don't think it's a bad thing to be behind Mbappe and Neymar. He was keeping those people out the squad as well. So he's definitely someone that he's a clinical finisher. He is different to what we have in the squad. People say it's good to have a plan B, and I think that does a disservice to it. I think he adds a versatility to Man United that we don't have today. We don't have that out-and-out striker as well. And I really think he's going to play a really important part and can change our formation and will be one to put the ball in the back of the net. And I'm excited. I think he's going to prove a lot of people wrong and score a lot of goals, just like people derided Zlatan for coming in. I can see Cavani having the same effect. He's old age-wise, but he runs, he's hungry, he finishes goals, and he still has a lot to give. He's not washed up by any means.
You have three strikers. You have Martial, and you're playing Rashford on the left, but he can play striker. You have Mason Greenwood, who you should probably be trying to invest in with development, who has probably scored more goals last season than Edison Cavani did, right? I don't understand.
I will say the only out-and-out striker we have is Greenwood, and we play him on the right wing. I don't think Rashford, Rashford, Antonio, Martial, Antonio West Ham, are all almost forwards. They're not strikers. They're all fast-paced forwards that use trickery to get in the box. They are not out-and-out strikers, and now we have an out-and-out striker.
All right, let's do that. Let's go to the working. Let's go to the working.
Do I get an opinion on who the? Yeah, I want my big six worst signings.
You dribbled on so long about Cavani, so I just kind of forgot.
Are you ready for mine? Number one, hands down, the worst signing this season by far, Timo Werner.
What?
I'll tell you why. Guess who scored more goals than Timo Werner? Chilwell. Chilwell's been back one game, scored more Premiership goals for Chelsea than Timo Werner.
Okay.
170,000 a week. He's scored 0. And the problem with that kind of striker is he's a confidence striker. The longer this goes on, the more his confidence will suffer, the worse he'll get. And you haven't found the right position, and he is by far the worst buy in the Premiership to date. It's a game week.
Well, that's a scorching hot take. I can feel the heat coming off you.
Followed very closely by Nathan Ake for 41 million. Man City defender. I've no idea what they're going to do with him. They bought like a third choice, fourth choice defender, and that poor guy, it's just another guy with high potential at another team who's going to get lost in the numbers at City.
Okay. All right. Is there a third, or are we just saying that's 1 and 2? Okay.
If I had to pick one, Timo Werner, hands down.
Woo. Man,
This is the Ben versus Ben that people are tuning in for.
This is. I'm a little flustered with the Timo Werner.
You bring a knife to the fight, I'll bring a gun.
Well, let me throw napalm on you. The rest of the league, let's go to the bottom 14 teams, the middle class of the Premier League, the working class of the Premier League. The best signing, Ben, of the rest of the Premier League, and please do not give me 7 best signings. Give me the best signing for the rest.
Can I give you 3, and for 3 different reasons? Number 1, Callum Wilson for Newcastle. He's changed the narrative around that club from these guys aren't going to stay up to they'll probably be safe. He scored 4 goals already this season. Class signing. Number 2, Martinez for Villa. In a market where goalkeepers, dependable goalkeepers, are in such high demand, how Villa have got someone the quality of Martinez, I'll never know. But he's going to make a huge difference to their season. And then number 3, completely different view of transfers. Someone whose value has grown exponentially, so they bought them for X amount. Now you could probably sell them for 10 times that, is Lamptey for Brighton. Everyone's falling over for just the development and breakthrough of that player.
I'm going to hold you a yellow card. He was not bought in this transfer window. He was bought in January. So, yellow card to you.
All right. Let's go Callum Wilson right now.
Callum Wilson. Tariq Lamptey. Yeah, the Lamptey, we've talked about Lamptey a little bit in the podcast. I think he's a very specific player. Like, I think he can only be a wing back. I don't think that he can play in a back 4. But, yeah, he has been ripping sides apart. And it's not bad to be a specialist. Like, Chelsea fans have a complicated history with Marcus Alonso. Marcus Alonso is not a great left back. He's a great left wing back. Mm-hmm. And if you need to go 3 at the back, there he goes. So, Wilson, I got it. My best signing in the league, and I think this is a layup, it's James Rodriguez. He has changed the global narrative of Everton. He was great this weekend. I mean, DCL is clearly the standout, but Everton has some new financial backing, and they are a traditional club. But it was almost like when Robinho went to Manchester City, it was a statement purpose signing, right? Yeah. That they can pull someone like James Rodriguez, and it's not fair to say he's fallen off the face of the earth since the 2014 World Cup, but he was probably one of the top 2 or 3 players in the world at that time, and he did not live up to his potential after that. I think some of that was not accepting the right moves. Real Madrid's a tough place to play, going to Bayern Munich, but he has shown he is still quality. James Rodriguez.
A lot of that is, I think, I agree. He's been a quality signing. It was a gamble though, and I think there's so many. Remember when Stoke used to buy ex potential players like Bojan and people like that a few years ago? And it worked out. I think James Rodriguez is the opposite. I think the difference is that they bought players that play well in that system they want to play. So they've not bought them because they're marquee signings. They've bought them because they fit the system. I think Allen has helped bring out Rodriguez's game. I think Richarlison going off injured helped Rodriguez to flourish and definitely get his goals in that game. But I do agree that really has probably kicked Everton up to the next level.
Yes, I will say this. I have said this before. I'm still watching. He is in long sleeves. It's too early to be in long sleeves, so I'm wondering how he is going to do in the cold weather. Let's get through this one quickly. The worst signing on the bottom sides. I mean, it's got to be Theo Walcott at Southampton. The sad version of the Gareth Bale coming home. I believe Theo Walcott was a Southampton player returning home. Theo Walcott sucks, and it's never go home again. I think it's also going to be a problem for Bale. I think he might be good, but never go home again. And he is just past it. A guy who's relying on his pace going into his 30s. It's going to be disastrous. I know they didn't pay a lot of money, but Theo Walcott to Southampton is just a bad signing.
I agree. I think that the argument is we're buying him to cover Danny Ings. He is not a great finisher. He is not a great mover. He is not backup. You could have done a better job of finding backup to to it, Theo Walcott.
Ben, saying that Theo Walcott is a bad, it's like a bad finisher. It's like saying like I'm a bad singer. It doesn't imply the severity of how bad of a singer.
Yeah.
Like there needs to be a worse term for bad than Theo Walcott's finishing. Okay, quickly, who is your worst signing?
I think Joe Hart from Spurs.
Huh.
I don't know why. They must be paying high wages for Hart or some kind of pay-as-you-play bonus. But why you want Joe Hart as your third choice keeper at Spurs? I have no idea.
Well, I think it's one is English, right? Like, yeah, the value for the money is probably not very good, but you don't take up a foreign roster spot. By every club should have a third choice keeper who is English because you're never going to play him, and then you have a foreign roster spot. Chelsea does not. That is bad roster management by my club. So weekend. Let's somewhat get this with a little speed. The rest of the weekend, as we go back, Leeds won, Manchester City won. Ben, was this the best football that I've seen in 2020?
It was the best 1-1 draw I've ever seen. How about that?
Yes.
It was
for sure.
mesmerizing.
Ben, how high can Leeds finish in the Premier League? I think that you have tried to damper my enthusiasm for Leeds. Where do you think is reasonable for Leeds to finish in this Premier League?
I think everyone has, and I think people keep bringing up tiredness, or people are going to work out how to play against them, how to break a high line, how to break that overload. Honestly, I think they're going to be in a European place.
Wow,
they're going to be European. I think that you don't have to be a good player to play in that squad, or necessarily a Premiership league. I think you just need to know your job and be well coached, and that means you can rotate into that squad.
You also need to be insanely fit. It was tiring watching Luke Ayling running up and down the pitch.
Ederson had a great game. Ederson had a phenomenal game, proven to be maybe one of the best keepers in the Premiership, even with that mistake.
He's the best one-on-one defender there is.
Yeah.
He is the best one-on-one shot stopper there is in the Premier League. Ben, I will say this. I am an unabashed fan of Leeds. I probably don't think that they're going to finish in the European place. I think that the fixture congestion and Bielsa's lack of rotation in the squad is maybe going to catch up with them because everyone in England is playing compressed fixtures that are very, very tough to deal with.
Yeah.
But I want to call something attention to you. Leeds wears a white kit. It is too thin white. I cannot see your male sports bras, like your tracking sports bras underneath your kit. That's an awful kit. Not an awful kit in design, but the see-throughness is terrible. Like people are wearing undershirts that I can see in the match. This is the Premier League. Come on now. I don't know who makes their kit.
White is a dangerous color, especially in England weather as well. Yes. I do think they're probably trying to save money. So they've probably gone for like almost a blend, too light a blend, bought cheap shirts. So I could see why that's going to be a problem.
Oh my God. It's terrible. It's terrible.
I will say that what Leeds do well is that speed of transition, but both teams had a lot of space to attack into. The whole game was played right in the middle with ability to run into each other's space. It was two very similar systems just beating seven shades out of each other.
There was at one point, I think that Kevin De Bruyne wanted to step off the pitch and said, I'm too tired. I'm not going to finish this match. I will say this, Leeds' fitness levels were crazy, but Kyle Walker made a run late in the match. I was like, where has that been, Kyle Walker? Yeah, I've sort of written off Kyle Walker. I did not think that he had that in him.
He's the best defender, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's not a really high bar. Ben.
My man is king for sure.
Yeah, there you go. Land the blind, the one-eyed man is king. I used to say that during fraternity pledgeship. Okay, so group these games together, although they probably should be broken apart. But let's attack them together because I want to talk about it at one point. We've had, the brief 4 weeks. I think we have talked about 2 players from the outside the top 6 a lot. Those 2 players are Miguel Antonio and DCL. So talking about this match, Leicester 0, West Ham 3, Everton 4, Brighton 2. 2 of the biggest surprises in the Premier League so far, West Ham and Everton. But then everyone wants to know, the Miguel Antonio DCL England debate rages on. DCL got the call up, Miguel Antonio didn't. And that is horse crap.
It's not horse crap. It makes total sense. And I stick with it last week. We've got too many players that play like Antonio, that come off the wing, too many forwards. What we don't have is that out-and-out finisher, and that's what DCL brings. Antonio is too much like Rashford, Sancho, Sterling, that unfortunately he's got a lot of players like him. Same with Grealish. There's a lot of players that have that position that are very good. No one plays like Calvert-Lewin. No one can finish like he can.
What are you talking about? No one can finish like him with his head, right? Like, there's no. Like, I could probably.
I take it back. He's finished some great chances.
The old sports argument where they're like, well, like Americans, if they really concentrated on soccer, could be amazing. Every time I watch Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I'm like, yeah, I bet you LeBron James can figure this soccer thing out. If this guy is scoring, I'm pretty sure.
We'll see. We'll see. He might. All you need someone who's there to hang out by the goal line, chase things down, and put things in the net, and that's what we don't have.
Miguel Antonio, West Ham, everyone expected to get relegated. They're out here whipping teams, and Miguel Antonio is leading that line by himself, running down the balls. He's like, I don't know, he's impressive to watch. His effort level is super impressive. So I talked about it. Let me go back to let me go to the Everton game first. Everton 4, Brighton 2. Is Pickford the new Kepa? We need like
100%.
We need someone to pick on. The low confidence. Pickford, when he dropped the ball that ended up in the goal, he did the famous, you didn't play baseball growing up, but when you strike out to deflect, you might adjust your batting gloves, play with your wristband, sort of say like, hey, everything wasn't 100% may have contributed to it, so you don't have to really make eye contact when you might be wanting to cry. Jordan Pickford did the readjustment of the gloves. Like,
I just looked at them like, what is wrong with my hands? It was great. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I'm really interested to see if he plays in the Nations League these coming weeks. I don't think he deserves to, and I think they need to figure out that goalkeeper position as soon as possible and give Pope and Henderson a chance as well. But to go back to Miguel Antonio, did you hear what they asked him after match of the day? They're like, and by the way, the lad talk, Antonio is a lad, L-A-D, lad. But the question for Antonio was like, okay, Antonio, everyone's going on international duty these next 2 weeks. Now, what are you going to be doing? There's lockdown. There's not much been going on. The pub shut early. So what are you going to be doing? I mean, talk about stick the knife in and twist it.
Antonio, your dreams is to play international football, but you are going to be living out your dreams this weekend. So how are you going to deal with your melancholy? You can't drink. Okay.
I think he said, "I am going to drink." Screw it. It was harsh, I thought, and Antonio's a great player. A lot of great players suffer from. We've got even better players in that position.
Yep. I don't agree that Dominic Calvert-Lewin is a better fit for the England side than Miguel Antonio, because none of those guys are going to play. So, like, probably right that unless something happens to Harry Kane, and even if something happens to Harry Kane, they might move another player into that position. What I would want in the England side is the effort level of Miguel Antonio is like that guy on the training pitch probably is so annoying how hard he's trying. And that's what you want for the last guy at the end of the bench.
Let me tell you, I think I don't want to belabor this point, but a good example of this is Sterling. A very, very, one of the best players in the world, you'd argue. He's great coming in from the wing. What he's not great is that out-and-out strike he's trying to play right now for Man City. And I think you'd suffer the same thing with Antonio if you tried to move him up front or put him up front by himself. I think it's a very, very different skill set than an attacking forward.
Let Miguel Antonio.
He's not coming anywhere near that squad.
Let him cook. All right. It's sad. He has been called up before, never played, but with Southgate. Ben, have we seen the rise? David Moyes. You know, every superhero story, or lots of them, starts with some sort of freak accident. You know, Spider-Man gets bit by a spider, he turns into Spider-Man. Or Peter Parker gets bit by a spider, he turns into Spider-Man. Bruce Banner gets infected with the gamma radiation, he turns into the Hulk. David Moyes gets COVID-19. All of a sudden, 7 goals and 2 wins on the hop. Is David Moyes the superhero that we need right now?
I think that people have been so mean and disrespectful to Moyes. What do they say? Not only do you get COVID, but you're quarantined, but then people start saying, you know what, you're only good when you're not in the dugout. I mean, talk about kick a man while he's down. It's been pretty horrible. And the fact that actually he's coached this team to do really well, and was a great manager with Everton, definitely has sucked since leaving Everton. But now, like, he's a good manager who's got them back, and now you've got COVID, and now people are saying, well, actually, maybe you should stay away more often. I mean, geez, football's a tough game, that's for sure.
They better be careful. He has superpowers now. They better be careful. Last game, quickly. We don't have to talk about it very quickly. Chelsea 4, Crystal Palace 0. 2 notable things in this match. Did you happen to see what happened in the penalty?
Yeah,
Tammy Abraham.
I love that. That's the best.
Well, you know what's amazing is I've never really seen Cesar Azpilicueta is legend. We call him Dave. Club legend has never struck me as, even though he is lead by example captain, right? I have never seen the visible leadership. So him going and just taking the ball from Tammy Abraham. You know, Tammy Abraham is like 10 feet taller than him. The image of him just grabbing the little ball, little Caesar running up to him and grabbing the ball and taking it and giving it to Jorginho. I loved it. I actually don't hate the selfishness by Tammy Abraham. Like, I sort of understand it. I hope that he channels it better later. But Tammy Abraham didn't stop making headlines after trying to grab the penalty ball. He went to to be fair to Tammy, it was a surprise party for him. So I don't really know if he should be dropped from the England squad. You walk into surprise party. What are you supposed to do? Say, get the fuck out of my... Oh, sorry, Mrs. Field. I did not mean to say... I didn't complete the curse word. I did not complete it. I cut it off. What are you supposed to do? Kick everyone out of your party and say, I'm sorry, we can only have 6 of you for my surprise birthday party. Ben Chilwell, Jadon Sancho, you have to go. Jadon Sancho, get on your plane back to wherever. Well, I guess he's flew in for England duty. Probably not just for the party. But
I mean, but why? How are they friends? How is Chilwell and Sancho all friends and they're going to Abraham's surprise party?
Probably through the England setup, right?
Right? Why weren't more players there? If Sancho's flying back to go to a party, why haven't you got more England players there? And
yeah, it would also seem why him and Fikayo Tomori, like, I know this a little bit, like, are supposed to be best friends. Why wasn't he there? It did seem weird that it was Sancho and
Chilwell,
the new of all the Chelsea guys. It wasn't Reece James, who he's grown up with, or Fikayo Tomori, or even someone like Dominic Solanke, if a football player is going to show up there, like people that he has grown up with in the Chelsea Academy. I did find that weird, but I thought it was harsh that he got dropped from the England team. Was not his fault. Free Tammy Abraham. Yeah. And Ben, we're broadcasting from the United States of America. So we're actually obligated to say that we've talked about superheroes coming back to the game this week with David Moyes, but the real superhero, the real Captain America, Christian Pulisic, has risen from the dead. He got a shot. I believe he got a shot on goal in the match. He played for 10 minutes. America's rejoicing. America's team, Chelsea, has their captain back. It is still startling to me to see that an American is succeeding at Chelsea to the level to where I think his name is in pen on the team sheet, not in pencil. I'll never get over it, but good to have Christian back. The United States is not playing during the international break, so rest up that hamstring, Captain. We'll see you when the international break is older. Ben, we end the podcast this week with the winners of the week and the
Let me ask
losers.
you
Maybe.
one question from last week.
Yep.
Do you think Sheffield are going down?
Ooh. Do I think that
They've got
Sheffield
0 wins in 4 games, the bottom of the table. Do you think they're going to be relegated, or do you think they can turn it around?
I didn't love the Ryan Brewster signing. That's another one that seems a little bit desperate, overpaying for a youth academy product for Liverpool. I think they paid him like $30 million. No, I don't think that manager. I think that manager did a lot, and he seems to be. I think he can get his house in order. I'm trying to, but it's not just a factor of what their level is; it's the teams around them. You would say that West Brom are in trouble, Burnley are in trouble. Trying to think. Fulham, yeah, I mean Fulham. So I think they will be somewhere below 10. Right, somewhere between that 10 to 15 range, which puts them in the relegation zone. But no, I do not think that Sheffield would not. Shout out to, he'll never listen to this podcast because he barely knows it exists, Stuart Davis, a friend of mine that I've known since I was, 9 or 10 years old at camp. He has been, his family's from Sheffield, diehard Sheffield United fan. He used to watch them from America when they were in League One. But shout out Stuart Davis, the only Sheffield United fan that I know. Ben, we like to crown winners of the week. We like to crown losers of the week. Ben, who is your winner of match day 4 in the Premier League?
I've given it to Ollie Watkins for his perfect hat trick and his introduction to the Premiership.
Ben, let's put respect on his name. Ollie George Arthur Watkins.
Sir Ollie George Arthur Watkins.
Sir, you know, Ollie's making kind of a renaissance as a name in America. There's a little bit more Ollie. I think his name's traditionally, it's Oliver. I think his Ollie is Oliver. So it's even more formal. It's Oliver George Arthur Watkins. But Ollies are making a comeback. I'm kind of in the baby name game right now.
As well. Arthur's part of that.
I think we're of two minds. Because this is an international break, I think I went with Jack Grealish because, I mean, he is just forcing his name into the England team. That, I think the problem for Jack Grealish is I think Southgate sees him as a winger, and maybe I got that wrong. Back that up. That England team and stay in that England team, you're not going to get it through the wings. Right, but there's a lot of wing talent in England right now. I think he needs to make it through the midfield because that midfield for England, woof. I mean, I like Mason Mount, but it's Mason Mount, Harry Winks, Jordan Henderson, Declan Rice. It's not really a who's who in that midfield there.
That's a great midfield. That is a very, very highly talented workhorse midfield, which I think is what you want. So the problem is you need workhorse midfield because you've got your wingers are so high up the field as well. You need a hard-working 3, Henderson, Rice, and then some imagination. And there's competition for that third spot like Grealish. I think he's earned the chance, and I'd like to see him in that kind of that 3. In the
you're never going to sell me on this.
Honestly, I think he's probably done more to outplace people like Rashford this season as well. So I'd like to see him go up against Sancho and Rashford for those positions. That front.
Well, I mean, you also have Raheem Sterling in those positions, right?
Yeah, and he's great for England, at least the last few games. I don't think Rashford and Sterling have done much. So I'd like to see Grealish on form, see what he can do.
All right. Yep. I mean, he's my winner of the week for forcing his name into the. Excuse me. I have a little bit of the hickey. My wife calls it the hickey uppies. My loser of the week. I mean, it has to be Harry Maguire. I mean, there was 2 bad results, right? The Liverpool result was bad, but you can't really pin it on one player. There's not like maybe Adrian, right? But he's a backup goalkeeper. You're talking about the England captain, Harry Maguire, the most expensive central defender in English football history. and he's just bad right now, just
Yeah.
bad. So he is my dunce, my loser of the week. Ben, who is your loser of the week?
I put Gunnosaurus, but then I'm still not quite sure of the Gunnosaurus status. So I'll take
No.
I know, I know what you're going to tell me. You're going to tell me Ozil, and I'm going to get to that. So they have to let him go for austerity reasons. But then you find out he's retiring, and that's not so sad. And Gunnosaurus will be back next season just with someone else. But now Ozil has stepped forward and said, I'm going to fund Gunnosaurus to stay. So I don't know what the truth is. Is Gunnosaurus losing his job because of austerity and COVID? Or is it he retiring? I don't know.
Do you know the Kroenke family? After they fired a 27-year employee who's probably not making much money, the day they signed a 45 million pound parte, right? And they're claiming austerity and finding Gunnosaurus to have, of all people, Mesut Ozil, who they hate at Arsenal, just step up and stick the dagger into him and be like, you cheap, SOBs, I will pay his salary. Man, of all the people to make the Kroenkes look like a clown show, Mesut Ozil doing it to them is very funny and provides me with quite laughs. Ben, we don't have we didn't even talk about it. Let's talk about this live on the air, and then we can finish this up. What do we want to do next week for our 5th podcast? We don't have we could talk. I mean, I'll watch some Nations League, but I don't think I can give it the.
It's absolute trash, the Nations League. I'm not sure what we do next week. I don't want to talk about Nations League because those games are absolute trash.
Okay. We've decided that we will not talk about Nations League. We can talk offline about how we want to fill the hours, but I think it's important to our millions and millions of fans across the nation and across the world that we figure out some content to give in their ear holes and in their eyeballs. So we'll think about something. I'll be on vacation. I'll be avoiding a hurricane in the Alabama Gulf Coast, visiting my family. But other than that, Ben, it's that time. It has ended. So it is ended. I will see you back digitally around these parts next week.
All right. I'll wait for my 6-pack patiently.
You might die of thirst waiting for that, but it will get there. I promise.
All right.
Ben.
Goodbye, Ben.